So, my topic today is about modern management and practical ways to conduct one on ones. If you have not heard of me yet, no worries. I'm Johanna Rothman. I like to call myself a management geek. I study and help apply modern management approaches to the organizations in which we work now. So you might ask, um, this is kind of a funny talk for people who might be mostly technical and very little management. But I suspect that all of you need to know about one-on-ones. And that's because I have some very bad one-on-one stories. Um, when I was a director in an organization, right? So I was in middle management. I got a new boss, a new VP of engineering, and the VP was very, very, very busy, running around all the time, um, always canceling my one-on-ones. So after 9 weeks, which I thought was a long time to not have a one-on-one with my manager, I started to look for another job. I got another job and left my resignation letter on his desk. 10 minutes later, he came over to me and said, "No, no, no, you cannot resign. You're the only one getting anything done." First of all, that was wrong. All of my fellow directors were also getting stuff done, and we worked together because he was not supporting us. And then I said, so we had many, many ongoing conversations about his actions and how I felt um, when when he canceled all of my one-on-ones. And another um, at another time, my manager wanted to ask me how I felt about things. How did I feel about being passed over for a specific promotion? Well, I felt badly, but I understood why the senior manager did not want me to take that job. Um, but I felt fine once I understood, and I was working on the things that would get me to the next place. How did I feel about the fact that one of my colleagues um, was having trouble at work? I thought that this was really unreasonable to discuss, and I did not want a manager as a therapist. And I actually said that to her. I'm sure um, she did not appreciate that. I find that uh, I am a big time extrovert. And even if you're not an extrovert, when you talk things through to figure out what you actually think, you might have heard talk to the duck as a debugging experience. When you talk to the duck, you express yourself in words. And I find that um, venting words, that's different than thinking in my head, right? Thinking in my head is good. It's not sufficient. So I often wanted to just talk to my manager, and my manager inflicted help on me. Well, I would do it this way. I don't care how you would do it. I'm in a different situation. So what I find is that managers don't want to be evil. They don't want to be bad. They're often busy with other stuff. They think they're doing a good job, but they don't really know what a good job is. So it's what's really interesting is that management one-on-ones affect absolutely everything in the organization. They affect how people feel about their jobs, as as my first example explained, which definitely affects how people work. If people are uncomfortable with a specific manager or uncomfortable with their teammates, um, how well can people actually work? And then, of course, all of those two affect how good the products are. So, in my experience, the one-on-one, the relationship that a manager has with all the people with whom he or she serves, those relationships matter a lot. So I talked about the infrequent meetings with one-on-ones as a problem, and that's often in hands-off management. Now, all of us who are working in agile ways, we don't want managers inside um, inside the work that we're doing. So that's a form of micromanagement. So is there a difference between totally hands off and micromanagement? I think that there is. I want to talk about that a little bit later. One-on-ones can, if you don't have them on a regular basis, you as a manager miss the early warning signals. And you as a person who has a one-on-one with a manager or your colleague, if you don't have them often enough, then you might miss early warning signals also. This discussion, this two-way discussion, really helps people see the early warning signals and figure out what to do about them. And if the manager does not have one-on-ones on a regular basis, the manager does not see the system of work, right? Because every so often people will say something like, Tim told everyone what to do when we were planning. So, Johanna, you got your stories. Kimberly, you got your stories. Alex, you got your stories. That's not an agile approach. So that not if a manager does not see this as the team's environment, how they work, and the manager misses the early warning signals, the manager cannot gently figure out what's going on. So there's all kinds of different one-on-one structures. I'm going to talk about more agile teams and um, with people who are either more or less experienced. Now, with traditional teams, you might not need a one-on-one every week or two, but you certainly need check-ins if you're not going to have a one-on-one every 2 weeks at minimum. Back when I managed more traditional teams, I had one-on-ones with every single person, I should say every single less experienced person every week. And for the people who were more experienced and I could trust to come to me when they had problems, those people I had one-on-ones with every 2 weeks. And in more agile teams, I always recommend 2 weeks. Now with peers, it's all about how do we have a cohort-based relationship wherever we are. I put that in here, although I'm not sure I really have time to discuss that. So if you are interested in peer one-on-ones, write down your questions, put them in the chat, and we will discuss them when it's time for Q&A. So I am assuming that you have a team or work group that works relatively well together and that the manager does not assign work, but looks at the overall context of the work, what I call the system of work. So I already said that regular management one-on-ones where you're checking in with the people that you lead and serve every week or two, depending on how the team works. And the one-on-one is all about building a trusting relationship. So there's a bunch of older data now that says that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. I'm not so sure about that. I think that people leave cultures as opposed to leaving managers. And in a bad culture, even if you have a trusting relationship with your manager, you cannot trust the managers beyond your manager. That's what I mean about the culture. So I'm not sure that people leave managers, although they certainly leave toxic managers. Absolutely. The idea with this trusting relationship is as a manager, I want to learn what every person wants from his or her career and what they need to do their job well now. I want to check in on their career development every so often, not necessarily every week. Before we started to record, a number of us said we had learned a whole lot more since the pandemic started, mostly because we can actually we could go to many, many more conferences and virtual events because we did not actually have to get on a plane or a train or anything and then go there for a day or two and only see one track of information. We can binge information now, and that's That's something that's one thing I have appreciated through this pandemic. I'm not sure that there's much else I've appreciated, but certainly that. And then the manager has to listen for bad news, because the more we listen for bad news in the one-on-ones, the earlier we can do something about the system. Yeah. So one of the people said that this business with the culture that people might not leave managers, but they leave the culture. If the culture of the organization is toxic, it does not matter how good the manager is. Thank you. So I already talked about one-on-ones where managers cancel them, and this means if you are the manager, you need to make the regular one-on-one time sacrosanct. You will have to protect your schedule, and if you are the person that the manager leads or serves, then you will have to ask your manager to do this. And I have found that just asking really works well. I would like you to protect our one-on-one time, please, manager. And if the manager says, I can't do that, I would actually ask, okay, this is probably why I'm a consultant. I would ask the word why, right? I mean, why is it so hard to keep time in your schedule sacrosanct, right, for the people that you lead and serve? And sometimes only asking that question might lead you both to say, this is a better time for us. I can project this time. This is a better time for me and my development. We have many, many options if we understand what's going on. So I will suggest, don't ask why in that 2-year-old voice, but ask why from a place of curiosity. And I'm not going to go into all the possible interruptions. You did not see me turn on do not disturb on my phone, quit Slack. Because Slack always has this, for me, irritating ping, ping, ping for notifications. I turned off my phone, right? I turned off anything that could make noise. I want to have a one-on-one that's a conversation and only a conversation with the person I lead and serve. If I'm the manager, and if I'm the person, I also want the same thing. And yes, I have suggested to my managers that they turn off all their notifications, because yeah, I am that way. So if you have a manager-led one-on-one, and especially if you are early in your agile transformation, or early in a transfer, or maybe you work in a work group and are a cross-functional team, if your manager feels the need to lead the one-on-ones, then this is a really good outline. And you can always, if you are not the manager, you can back lead the manager into this. You can say, hi, I'm so glad we have this time to meet, even if you're not so glad, right? And you can say, and then the manager will say, hi, Johanna, right? You might say, can you tell me about the action items we had from our most recent one-on-one? And you will then take your list of actions and ask the manager what they did. I always recommend that the manager starts with his or her action items, not with asking the other person what they did or did not do. And then I like to ask for obstacles. Again, you can backlead this. I ask if people want support or help or feedback or coaching, whatever words you want to use. And for feedback, for me, it's always, especially in agile teams, it's feedback about the feedback, right? Meta feedback, or feedback about the coaching, or coaching about the coaching. So I go up a level and figure out what was actually going on. As I said before, I might not want to do career development every week, but if your manager is not doing career development with you at least once a month, this is your placeholder for us for that discussion. And then what else do we want to discuss? And then any other action item review. This last action item review is for the person, not the manager. right? So the management action items I like to do first, and then the person's action items. Because the more you work in an agile team, the fewer action items you will you will have as a manager, right? Or I should say, you will have as a person to your manager. Does that make sense? Your action items are for your team, not for your manager. Now, I really like it when the person who is when the manager does not take the responsibility to create an agenda. However, I do find that more often than not, everybody needs an agenda for any kind of a meeting. So if you are if your manager says, I'm going to lead this one-on-one, but I want you to set the agenda, excellent, right? You will do the check-in, and then you will hopefully say to the manager a day or so before the one-on-one, um, the ideas about any obstacles you have, help, feedback coaching, career development, action item review, anything else you want to discuss. Now, one time when I did this with one of my managers, I actually said, I really hate to kind of tell tales out of school, but this person in our work group is not actually doing his job. He's not coming into work on a regular basis. I ask him for stuff. He does not deliver. I'm not sure he's doing anything for the team that he's supposed to work with. And I want to make sure that you know. The first time I told my manager about that person, my manager was shocked, right? How can you talk about other people, Johanna? I said, he's giving our group a bad name. And I other people are asking me to do his work. So I'm not finding this very helpful at all. So I was telling my manager about a person who was unable to do the work, right? There are not that many people who are actually unable to do the work in our industry. There are people who don't know what they need to do, and there are people who might not realize when they need to do some work. But I more often find people who are they can wear t-shirts that say does not play well with others, right? Those uncollaborative ungellers. I find that those people are not very helpful in the organization. And more often, if you work in an agile team, your manager does not know. So this is your opportunity to actually talk to your manager about this particular kind of a problem. So, and this is a more of, if you add obstacles, help, feedback, coaching, career development, all that stuff, if you add that to the agenda, you have um, a more traditional one-on-one, but not a perfectly traditional where the manager says, here's what we're going to talk about. And the more introverted your manager is, and the more introverted you are, the more you need to offer this agenda to your manager on a regular basis, a day or so before, but not 2 hours before. That's often not enough time for introverts to think. So when I talk about introverts versus extroverts, I talk to understand what the heck it is that I actually think. I don't know what I think until the words come out. And if I am more of an introvert, I process inside my head. And you can probably tell from this presentation, I do almost no processing inside my head before I speak. Right. Some of you who are introverts don't understand me, and I don't get you. But and I'm delighted that we can all kind of play well together. Now there's a third kind of minimal one-on-one structure. And I like to say, and this might look as if it's a manager led, sorry, allergies where I live. Yeah, sorry. So I do recommend the check-in. And this is where the manager might ask, what do you need? You need anything? You know, tell me about your needs. Just tell me. And then the manager sits back and listens, not talks. And then the manager might ask, is anything getting in your way? And almost always something in the organization is getting in your way. And then the other question is, what can I as a manager do to help or to support you? Whatever words you like. Um, I find that if we think about what we want to say a little bit in advance, not a lot in advance, we don't need to have everything on the table for an agenda in, you know, 2 hours, I should say 24 hours in advance. But as long as you and your manager understand, if you have a working relationship about how you think, whether or not you're an extrovert and the words just come out, or if you're an introvert and you need to process a little bit, then your manager will have patience and you can have patience with your manager. Until I actually understood how introverts processed their thinking, um, I did not get why they needed to think. A little oblivious over here when I was younger. Hopefully, I'm smarter now. So these are three kinds of one-on-one structures, and this one is really looking for obstacles, for anything that prevents you from getting the work done, right? And as opposed to this one, where you might, this is more about the system of work and your place in the system of work. So I really like thinking about how my managers can help me um, get through all the craziness and focus on the goodness, what I can do to really get everything done that I'm supposed to get done, either alone or with my team. Now, the more often you have regular one-on-ones, the more often the manager can offer reinforcing feedback. So we often talk about change focused feedback. And I have all of my life, I have heard, Johanna, you are too blunt and direct. Change, I don't know what to do with that feedback, right? It's change focused, right? How can I be less blunt and direct? Sorry, it's a part of me. However, I recently, I don't know, 5 years ago now, heard from a client that said, Johanna, when you chose words so that so and so could hear them, I you that person, that more senior manager, really listened to what you had to say and took the reins so that we could actually change our culture. That was reinforcing feedback for me. That said to me, oh, I really got to look at my words. I know. Oh, how old was I? Too old. However, better late than never. So the more reinforcing feedback we offer each other, the more often we are likely to do the better things in the organization. And the regular one-on-ones offer these early warning signals. So I gave my manager the early warning signal about this guy who was not doing his job. My manager chose to ignore that, which was really a problem. However, that would have allowed her to see the team's system and environments. Now, the more often you have one-on-ones, the more you can avoid performance reviews, which just don't work. I have on my to-do list, I have a thing about what to do instead of performance reviews and performance evaluations, because they don't work. Valuations are about managing money, not performance. But we don't want people to run open loop. We want people to get feedback on a regular basis. And I see that there's stuff going on in the chat, but I'm going to finish what I have to say first. And then I will go back to the chat because I'm not doing this back and forth thing very well. So when I talk about this change focus versus reinforcing feedback, I really like to think about how can we help people realize what they do right, what they do well, and especially in an agile team, what supports other people. So if you work in an agile team and you're not working for the betterment of the team, your agility is very brittle. So the more we can work to support the entire team while still doing our work, the more agile our team can be, and that means we can get fast feedback loops on the product. So um, this whole business of reinforcing feedback, the more we offer reinforcing feedback, the better off it is. This is a speed thing near my house, and I was I was in the passenger seat, so I could take this picture. Um, well, I think actually I gave my daughter the phone. I think I was driving. I have a tendency to be pedal to the metal, right? I If there was a way to go fast, I really like to go fast because I've always had cars that kind of reinforce that behavior. My daughter, I was so proud of myself. The speed limit was not flashing. And I said, "Oh, please take a picture." And so she did. So I found that this reinforcing feedback, just telling me what my speed is, really helped me slow down on that hill. So I said in the description for this talk that we might have peer one-on-ones. And also, um, if you're working on a problem that you need to solve all over the organization, I like weekly as a cadence, maybe bi-weekly. It really all depends. And I advocate this kind of a structure where we check in, we reinforce the common goals that we have, and then we discuss obstacles and the action items. So again, I really like agendas for any kind of a meeting. If we go into a meeting, we should know what we're going to talk about. We just should. Otherwise, we spend the first half of the meeting trying to figure out what's going on. So I really hope that we stay in touch. I wrote about one-on-ones with Esther Derby and Behind Closed Doors, Secrets of Great Management. This particular talk is taken from Practical Ways to Lead and Serve Others. Now I'm going to stop the share and go to the chat. And yes, you will definitely get a copy of the slides. I will put them on a speaker deck and send Kimberly a link to the speaker deck so that she can put them with the recording. So let's see if I can go back to, I believe, I also have an example with a good culture, but not so good manager. So probably both of them, manager and culture. The question is that the responsibility of a manager to influence a toxic culture, and you would say yes. And Tana, I'm going to use your name. I hope that that's okay. I agree with you. And I think it's also really a challenge to influence a toxic culture if you're just one manager, which is why I advocate managers work in cohorts. Remember, I talked about the peer relationship, that if you're a manager and you want peer one-on-ones, this influence against a toxic culture, that's a really big deal. You can all say, what does a toxic culture do that's a bad thing for us? How can we make it better? And that you might have to work, you probably do have to work as a cohort to really figure this out. So I hope that I really agree with that one, Anton. Yeah, Pranav, I think it's if you hold back on saying things on your mind during a one-on-one, that's not necessarily a sign of a bad culture, but it's often a sign where you might not feel free to offer your opinions or free to experiment. So I don't know how many of you are trying to use agile approaches. I'm assuming all of you. And the thing about an agile approach is I really want to experiment, but I don't necessarily just want to experiment with things that I learn will work. I also want to experiment, especially to find things that don't work as fast as possible. So I don't know if you think about experiments like that, But the faster I can give feedback for what does not work, the faster I can be, or at least my team can be. And the more you think about things that you want to bring up in a one-on-one, how free are you to experiment with stuff that does not work? If you are not feeling safe for stuff like that, the lack of safety, right? Going meta about that might be a really big deal to discuss in your one-on-one. So Alex asked about personal elements in one-on-ones. I really like this is your chance, your one chance during the week, or maybe once every 2 weeks, to talk to your manager in private. I take advantage of that for everything. Certainly career aspirations. Anything you say, anything that prevents the entire team from working well or the entire organization from working well. To me, that's all fodder for a one-on-one. So I really like to think about any kind of any question you have, any personal issue. Um, a number of years ago, I had one-on-ones, regular one-on-ones with everybody in my work group. I was a contract manager. Was I a director? I might have been for a test team. So everyone worked on different aspects. It was all one product, but we talked about the functional team as a team. And I was encouraging people to work as cross-functional teams with their part of the product. And one of the women came to me. She was in her early 40s, and she said, Johanna, I've been having horrible stomach pains. I've been eating Tums, which is an antacid, by the handful. I've been going for more and more tests. I don't understand what's going on. I'm taking off all day Friday. I'm going to go for tests. I'm going to figure this out. I said, good, because this has been going on for a couple of months by now. And she said, I gained weight. I shouldn't be gaining weight. So I said, fine. Take Friday. Let me know. Take as much time as you need. Just let me know what's going on. I received I received a voicemail on Friday night that said, I'm pregnant. I'm 6 months pregnant. Okay, good. I received a voicemail from her husband on Monday morning that said she delivered the baby on Sunday night, and everybody was fine. So if we don't know about people and their this is a good thing that was a surprise. I've certainly I worked with people who had partners going through cancer, and all the chemo and radiation that comes with it, where they needed to take time off to complete adoptions, where they needed to take an afternoon off to take pictures for the prom that their kids were going to that night. I mean, we are people. We have life cycle events, which are all wonderful, and we need to be able to discuss them in private, because even the good ones, people don't always want to discuss them in public, right? So a private conversation, and the really bad ones, right, where I had to support a guy who was an alcoholic, and he was in total denial. I gave him the employee system program brochure. I said, I look in your coffee cup. It's a clear liquid and you're slurring your words. And it's not like you have vertigo, right? The way I do, and I use a rollator. So we need to fix this. I could not have had that conversation with him in public. So anything is fodder for a one-on-one. And how do you become comfortable with this? Carefully, by building that trusting relationship from the start. I could never have talked to this guy about his alcoholism until I built that trusting relationship. So let me talk about this, the manager's manager, the skip level one-on-one. I would keep that conversation to the system of work. to the environment. I am not that fond of skip level one-on-ones. As an employee, I always wondered, did this manager want me to spy on my manager? What was this all about? Right? Did my manager's manager not trust my manager? So I'm not that big on skip level one-on-ones. However, if I do have an opportunity for skip level one-on-one, I would set the agenda and I would talk about the general environment. And this is where, and especially in an agile organization, I would talk about the fact that performance evaluations are ridiculous, and that performance reviews are crazy, and that we need to work as teams in flow efficiency thinking as opposed to resource efficiency thinking. Flow efficiency thinking is when a team works together and the team takes the item of work and they work on it together in some way and they finish it together. Resource efficiency says the item comes in, the first person starts to work on it. And you might say this in your teams as the architect starts to work on it. Then the architect hands off the work to a developer. The developer finishes the code and says, other developer, I need you to do code review. And then the item sits waiting for code review. In the meantime, the first developer has new item. Or maybe if we're really lucky, the first developer has code review for somebody else. The second developer now has to finish his or her work and then go to code review on the first thing. And finally, everything gets done, right? These two people offer each other feedback and it goes to the tester. And the tester says, oh, this might be the way you want it to work, but it's not working for the customer and it's not passing any of my tests. So it goes back to the beginning. When we work in resource efficiency, we have delays. If I have a skip level one-on-one, I would talk about resource efficiency thinking versus flow efficiency thinking. How can we work more as a team and less as separate individuals? And that changes everything about how the organization rewards people. So yeah, I would just advocate for revolution in the skip level one-on-one. I know that does not work for everybody. So what else? Did I miss any of the questions? If I missed a question, please, oh, Darren asks, that's an interesting view on performance reviews. What alternatives do you suggest to ensure people progress financially, professionally, and financially? Thank you, Darren. So first of all, if you don't have at least a kind of a three parallel tracks for your organization, then you probably don't have enough information for people to move adequately across the organization. I will link to a different slide deck in my slides before I give them to Kimberly about the three-track possibility. Every level on those three tracks has to have criteria for what the organization expects at this level and at the next level. If you know what the organization expects of you at any given level, especially for breadth of influence, how you take responsibility, I often find this so-called soft skills, the interpersonal skills that we need to focus on a lot more for progression. If you know what those are, let me give you an example. So I said back at the beginning of this talk, one of my managers said to me, "You're not ready for the next level of management." I said, "Okay, what do I need to do to get ready so I can be the manager I wanted to be?" He said, "You need to start using your influence skills." We talked about building rapport. We talked about having the right people see my competence, how I would look for short-term and long-term mutually agreeable alternatives, how I could manage not to pick the very first alternative and have more alternatives. So all kinds of things like that. Um, that was really helpful for me. So if I had waited an entire year for a performance review, I would never have been able to start work on those issues when I wanted to. So that's why performance reviews don't work, even if they come in a more frequent cadence. I do want people to progress financially, which is why I'm not a fan of once a year financial progression. I'm much more of a quarterly based financial progression person. And even more often, if you so say you finished this really big deliverable in the middle of Q1, and you realize as a manager that you need to offer not just feedback, but offer monetary recognition for what people have done. And you say to your manager or to HR, it's time to address um, performance value, the money for these people because they've done such a great job. And if you work in an organization like many of my clients, you tend to do money kinds of fixing at the end of the year or in January. And HR comes to you and says, it's the middle of February. We're not going to do it now. We're going to wait almost an entire year. Why would you do that? So that's why I find that more frequent money assessments against criteria at many levels will help everybody as opposed to just helping HR manage the money or finance to manage the money. We still need to manage the money. I'm not talking about running open loop on salary expenses, but we need to do something different than what we're doing now. Yes, I need to write about this. Sorry, Dan. Other questions? Oh, so Darren, I write about this stuff on my managing product development blog on jrothman.com. So you can subscribe to it. You can just wait until I tweet about something. I need to write a whole series. This is not a one and done blog post. And so there's another question. Should I leave a toxic culture or try to change it? Okay, so I think it really depends. It depends on many things. Do you buy into the overarching goal and the why for the organization? If you do, maybe stay there and get allies and try and change it. So the best change book I know is Esther Derby's 7 Rules for Change or whatever it's called, right? So, and the first thing that Esther talks about is finding allies. You cannot change a culture by yourself. You need to find allies. So, why you might decide life is just too short and I'm not going to do it, not for a product or service I don't really believe in. And you might say, a couple hundred people, maybe they just don't know I could do this, and that would really work. So I think that trying to decide whether or not to leave a toxic culture is all about your how you think about what your organization could do. And um, the book I have, Create Your Successful Agile Project, is all about how you can create a helpful agile culture that really helps people work together. It really helps the organization has a better deliverable and better outcomes. Oh, so as a new manager, what should you do to become more comfortable with hosting your one-on-ones? And you coach your team to be honest and comfortable to talk to you? Start with yourself and have one-on-ones on a fairly frequent basis. So as I said, at least once every 2 weeks. You might even tell your team, I really want to practice my one-on-ones. I'm not very comfortable with them. So I would like to have 20-minute one-on-ones with everybody once a week. we will time box them to 20 minutes. And if I start to talk too much, you can tell me, stop talking. And the more you are vulnerable, the more you ask for help, the more you say, we need to do this as a team, the more your manager has a chance. Well, when you model that behavior, the more your team will model that behavior. So if it, we have the saying in Agile, if it hurts more, if it hurts, do more of it, right? So I don't know if you knew way back when we had trouble doing anything more than weekly bills. Going to nightly bills was horrible. So, and now we have often bills on demand or at least hourly bills. So, how did we get there? We did it more and more often. We removed all the obstacles one at a time. So, that's what you can do as a new manager. Say, I need help. I want to practice. Please help me practice. There you go. Thank you all very much.